God knows that in the oil and gas industry, you always need a little motivation when you're drilling a new well or reworking an old well, hoping to strike it rich. I'll explain that and much more on this episode of The Crude Truth.
In 1901, at Spindletop Hill near Beaumont, the future of Texas changed dramatically as, like a fountain of fortune, thousands of barrels of oil burst from the earth towards the sky. Soon, Detroit would be cranking out Model Ts by the millions, and America was on the move, thanks to the black gold being produced in Texas. Now, more than a century later, the vehicles are different, but nothing else has truly changed. Sure, there may be many other alternative energy sources like wind and solar and electric. But let's be honest, America depends on oil and entrepreneurs, and if the USA is truly going to be independent, it has to know the crude truth.
Well, hello there. Good afternoon, good morning, whenever it is that you're watching this great episode of The Crude Truth. I'm just so excited today. I'm actually here at our Dallas Real News studio. I had an opportunity to have a great meeting with a great man named Dan Clark. He is a former college athlete. He is a award-winning author. He's also one of the top 10 international motivational speakers here in the world. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm great, RT. I thought this was going to be an uplifting experience, and I look at you and your hair has not moved since 1987, and I'm losing my hair right here, and I'm growing it in places I don't even need it. Not a fair trade-off. My only hope is that the hair in my right ear will grow long enough I can comb it up over the top of my head and fake you out. So I'm hoping that as we continue this conversation, my self-esteem will strengthen and turn into positive. You're such a stud. I'm a songwriter. I'd write a song about RT, but I don't know what rhymes with stud, muffin, hunk of burning love. So I can't wait to chat. We're going to change the world today, brother.
Oh my gosh. No. You are out there moving and doing. You're here in Dallas this week at a motivational, or you're speaking at a conference of some kind. And so it's just too great to have an opportunity to invite you to come into the studio. And because you do change the world, you change people's life on a daily basis. And it's because why? You're a motivational speaker. You're one of the top 10. And in fact, you're even in the Global Motivational Speakers Hall of Fame. Is that correct?
Professional Speakers Hall of Fame, yeah.
Yes. And, we had an opportunity to meet yesterday and just had a good little chat session, or I guess in the music industry, a little jam session,
Absolutely.
if you will. And you said, you asked me what I do. And I said, well, I'm in the oil and gas industry, second generation. And they've all heard that story, and you heard it yesterday. So it's like, and you were like, wow, you're in the oil and gas industry. He goes, that Spindletop changed my life. And I was like, what? What do you mean Spindletop changed your life? And so please share that story if you got a minute.
Yeah, so I played football for 13 years total. And one day in practice, the dream ended. We had a tackling drill. Coach blew the whistle. Two of us ran into each other full speed. Only parts of our bodies that made contact. Lyle's helmet crashed into my helmet in a violent head-on collision. My right shoulder was smashed into the cutting edge of my fiberglass pads, and we slammed to the ground. And when Lyle got off of me, my eye drooped. I had loss of speech. I couldn't talk anymore. My right side was paralyzed. My arm dangled at my side. Coach comes running over. Clark, you all right? What happened? Rock, I show Roku, Shafra. He says, whoa, are you from Grapevine? I'm just kidding you. He said, you better just lay there. I said, whoa. A doctor that was present on the field, he came over and he examined me, pulls the coach aside. He says, Clark's got serious nerve damage. In fact, he might even have serious brain damage. Coach looks at him and says, how will we ever know? Nice guy. Finally, my eye went back to normal. My speech came back. I could talk again.
Yeah.
But my right side stayed paralyzed, arm dangling at my side. Stayed paralyzed for 14 months. And my life hit what I thought was a downward spiral till I hit what I thought was rock bottom. And now that I've recovered, I want you to understand just a couple of things that directly tie me into the crude truth, crude oil. That is so interesting how, in retrospect now, I wouldn't be on this program had I not been paralyzed. So we've all been taught and we've all believed, I think, that things happen for a reason.
Absolutely.
but it's our responsibility to determine what that reason is. So there's a reason bigger than us of why you and I met yesterday and why I'm on your program, but the beginning of a lifelong friendship, because we don't attract who we want in our lives, we attract who we are.
Yeah.
You know, the goal, the purpose of a leader is to grow more leaders who believe what you believe, not generate more followers. So I think we've started off on the right track. And when I hit what I thought was rock bottom, the vice president of the University of Utah, he was concerned I was suicidal, I was confused, my heart was broken, my dreams were shattered. I was a projected #1 draft pick by the Oakland Raiders. I'd had an invitation trial by the Kansas City Royals as a baseball pitcher coming out of high school. Athletic sports was my whole life. It was my identity. Yeah. And in 1 minute, I lost my identity. And while I was down, the vice president of the University of Utah brought me a cassette tape to listen to by a, quote, motivational speaker by the name of Zig Ziglar. And I thought, whoa, his mom ran out of names. So out of curiosity, I listened to it. And one story in a 45-minute speech literally changed my life, and tying into your whole family enterprise, oil and gas, exploration, pumping, the whole industry. The name of this most famous and most productive oil well was called Spindletop. And there's no one better to share that story than our own beloved Zig Ziglar.
Around the turn of the century down in South Texas, there was a farmer selling much of his land. He was having to sell it simply because times were so tough. He couldn't feed his family. One day an oil company representative came along and said, "Sir, you know, we think there might be oil on your property. Let us drill for it, and if we discover any, we'll pay you royalties on every barrel that we pump out." Well, he had nothing to lose, a great deal to gain, so he said, "Let's do it." Well, they drilled for the oil, and in those days, the derricks were made out of wood. And when they had a gusher, the gusher literally destroyed the derrick. And the greater the destruction, the greater the excitement, because that meant an abundance of oil underneath. When this oil well came in, it literally obliterated the derrick. And before they could cap it, over 100,000 barrels of oil had flowed out. It was the world's introduction to Spindletop, the most productive oil well in history. 3 oil companies came out of that field. The man became an instant millionaire. Or did he? The reality is he'd been a multi-millionaire ever since he had acquired the property. But until they drilled for the oil, discovered it, brought it to the surface, and took it to the marketplace, it really had no value. I found a lot of people pretty much that way. They've got an awful lot underneath the surface, but until they bring it out and take it to the marketplace, they will never realize even a minute fraction of the benefits that they could bring themselves, their families, their friends, their community, and everyone else. The purpose of Strategies for Success is to share with you, how do we discover the oil? How do we bring it to the surface? How do we take it to the marketplace? How can we learn to be so that we can do, and do so that we can have?
That is, I've never heard that Zig Ziglar comparison. I mean, oil and gas industry, yes, you know, Spindletop, we all want the next Spindletop, especially being small independent operators. But to bring that in with Zig Ziglar in a motivational way, and you sharing that story with me yesterday, I mean, wow. I mean, please. Wow.
And what that did is that triggered in me a belief that there was so much more inside of me, and that I just needed to find a new identity and create and play a different game. So I went to 16 doctors. 15 told me I would never get any better. What happens if you believe it? You never get any better.
Yeah.
And that's why I say I thought I hit rock bottom. Now that I've recovered, 3 most frequently asked questions that I think are powerful to share. Number 1, what do you mean you thought you hit rock bottom? No one ever hits rock bottom. We hit rock foundation. We hit rock belief. We hit the baseline core values on which we were raised. And coming out of COVID or the pandemic, whatever you want to call it, if you think your organization, your company hit rock bottom, wrong. It hit rock foundation. It hit the baseline governing principles on which it was built.
Yeah.
So culture is everything in our lives. And the question for all of you viewers is your current belief strong enough, deep enough, and true enough? Have you drilled deep enough? And if you look into the real story, the details of Spindletop, they kept, as they drilled deeper through the Earth's crust and the Earth's ground. They kept finding different obstacles, kind of a quicksandy, a sand. And had they stopped there, we would have never heard of Spindletop, and there would have never been all these gajillionaires created. You had to keep drilling deep enough and deep enough and deep enough until you find that reservoir of oil and figure out a way to tap into it. So is your current belief strong enough, deep enough, and true enough to equip you and empower you to respond to rapid change? If not, that's where you begin in resiliency. That's where you begin in pivoting and recovering from the pandemic. Question number 2, why did I go to so many different doctors? I kept going from doctor to doctor until I found one who believed I would get better. Yeah. Number 3, what took me so long to recover? I was asking the wrong questions. I was asking the doctors how to get better when I should have been asking myself why. Once we answer why, I figured out the how to becomes clear and simple.
Ask the why.
Yeah.
Why.
Your why has to be bigger than your why not. Okay. That's what keeps you going.
Your why has to be bigger than your why not. I like that.
Yeah.
Golly. So you get better, you walk, you got eyesight again, and you don't obviously you don't have droopy eyes,
Nope.
at least I don't
Everything's
think
good
so.
so
Yeah,
far.
you're good.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens,
Yeah.
right? So what happens next? Like, I mean, I just read off all these accolades about you. I forgot to even put on there that you're an adventurer.
That's
I mean,
okay.
we could talk about the jets here in a minute. And what I mean by jets is the air flying battle or what are they?
Fighter jets and bombers
Thank you.
went up into space in YouTube. What happened is, as I started to talk about my recovery and engage in the recovery, I became really philosophical. And I started understanding that if you're sitting around wondering if your glass is half empty or half full, you've missed the point. It's refillable. Thinking positive or thinking negative doesn't fill up the glass, the pouring does. And because I'm a songwriter, I love to create hooks or quotes, quotable quotes. It's easier to act your way into positive thinking than it is to think your way into positive action.
Okay.
You can have all the geology and tests and everything done and the thermo scans of the earth, and you can find the oil, but if you never drill, you'll never get it out to use it as it was meant to be used. And the same thing with us. Pain is a signal to grow, not to suffer. Once you learn the lesson the pain is teaching you, the pain goes away. So in life, there's no mistakes, only lessons. It's not enough to say, I will do my best. We must succeed in doing that which is necessary. Again, look in the history of Spindletop. They just kept going and going and going. And they went broke. They ran out of resources. And somebody would come in and say, no, I believe there's oil down there. Let's just keep going. One of the most powerful things that I've learned just hanging with you, RT, is that we actually become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. So if you're going to take a job in the oil fields, if you're going to take a job on Wall Street, if you're going to take a job working for an amazing company in Dallas or come to Real News TV station, these amazing state-of-the-art studios, we have to realize that we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. So if you hang around with 5 broke people, you're going to become the 6th. If you hang around with 5 negative, whining, blaming, complaining people, you're going to become the 6th. You put a hard-to-catch horse in the same field with an easy-to-catch horse, you end up with 2 hard-to-catch horses. And in the human condition, when you put a healthy child in the same room with a sick child, most of the time you end up with 2 sick children. In the oil fields, on Wall Street, in our children's schools. So the reality is we must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with extraordinary human beings, even online, even in your own television show. We must pay the price. We must seek the influences in our lives that keep us on track. Otherwise, we'll get depressed and we'll get discouraged, we'll get disappointed, we'll give up. Suicidal tendencies seem to be flourishing right now because people are mixed up about their why. And their why not's bigger than their why, so they're just giving up on life itself, and that's not right. There's a solution, and we need to understand it.
Boom. I don't know. I think we're done. I mean, that was awesome. Dan, if that's not some crude truth right there, I don't know what is. You're absolutely right that right now, I mean, I know I just felt, God knows I need what you just said. And I'm sure there's other people out there that are listening to this also need what you have just said. Let's kind of pivot a little bit into, wow, you almost got to like, hey man, take a break. But you mentioned suicide, and right now with the way that everything is going, yes, we have a few things working not in our favor. We'll call it. We got inflation's going up, prices are going up. Some would say that we have an administration that's not working towards the people of America, but also we do have, more seriously, a very high suicidal rate right now. I know that in the oil and gas industry, there's many a times where you have great people that are out there working out in the fields, and they don't show up the morning for their shift, and you're like, well, where's he at this morning? And they may have passed away due to themselves, basically did suicide the night before, and you just don't understand why. It's like, man, this guy was great yesterday. What is it? So right now is a time of high suicide thoughts in America, and in fact, I think Utah just signed into some new bill as well. Is that correct? Because that's where you're from. You do live in Utah.
In the mountains of Utah. Yeah. We passed legislation a while ago to create a telephone number, 988, easy to remember. Mm-hmm. And we passed enough legislation and financial support to make sure that we always had a person answering the phone when someone called in, so that they would never be put on hold or leave a message. Mm-hmm. Statistics show that anyone who has decided to take their life, to complete their suicide, if we could just get them to hang on for 15 more minutes, something happens in that 15 minutes where they decide not to do it. Because in suicide, when I hit what I thought was rock bottom, I had suicidal thoughts. I was confused. My life as I knew it, as I dreamed it, had come to an end. Let's just lighten the load for a moment and talk about that stereotypical male midlife crisis. Most men have a midlife crisis about the age of 50 and 55. And a midlife crisis to a man, can't define it for a woman, but for a man, a midlife crisis is where the man you are comes face to face with the man you thought you would have been or that you could be. As I said, most men have their midlife crisis at 50, 55. I had mine when I was 22.
Okay.
And so I really had some suicidal thoughts. And what I've learned now, in speaking all over the world in suicide prevention, nobody wants to die. We just want the pain to go away. And when I was rock bottom, as I thought I was rock bottom, I had physicians, I had coaches, I had people who cared about me, who tried to convince me that I was depressed. Oh, Dan, you're depressed. The physicians take this medication for depression. No. Yeah. Let's honor those who have been diagnosed with a chemical imbalance. They have depression. They need non-judgmental friendship and unconditional love. Yeah. They need a physician's care. But most people who say they're depressed are just recklessly, flippantly using that word to describe hungry, angry, lonely, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or sad. And when we're experiencing any one of those 5 emotionally distorting conditions, we can't feel, we can't love, we can't listen, we can't forgive, we can't be fully alive. We're not depressed. We don't need medication that flatlines us. We need a dream. We need to change the 5 people we are associating with the most. We need to inculcate humor, but more importantly, we need to focus in on service before self. We need to reach out and help someone else. And when I was injured, when I was paralyzed, I was not depressed. I learned there was a giant difference between being depressed and being disappointed. Huge difference between being depressed and being discouraged. And when you're experiencing discouragement or sadness or disappointment, you just have to change your environment, change your state, change your mindset, fire up, and figure out what you can do right now. So if we want to talk prevention, let's just talk about something that all generations, all age groups, all races, all genders have in common, and that's time. So if you think about Utah is 6th in the nation in teenage suicides. And we just dropped from 5 to 6. And I'm in the Suicide Prevention Coalition with the governor. And my maverick personality, I'm like, that's nothing to celebrate. That just means that the state of Alabama had more teenage suicides than we did. We didn't fix anything. We just dropped because they had more than we had. Scary. But you realize the number one demographic of suicides in America is white males over the age of 50. So let me just point out what we have in common, and the way we solve the dilemma and snap out of discouragement, disappointment, and sadness through service before self is to understand the sanctity and significance of time. A quote with a powerful, quick story.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Today, you've never been this old before. And today, you'll never be this young again. So right now matters, and every right now matters, which means no matter what your past has been, you have a spotless future, which means you can't always control what happens, but you can always control what happens next. Are you with me? So the question is, do you believe that the second you click off this show with RT and myself, that you can actually change your life forever? Do you really believe that one moment in time can change you forever? I do. Proof. I was on the program with Henry Winkler, the Fonzie from Happy Days, clearly one of the funniest guys I've ever met. He started a 1970s television sitcom called Happy Days, and he was the coolest guy I ever looked. Hey, whoa, the Fonzie. Henry Winkler and I, we finished our speeches. He decides he wants to take some time off, treat himself to a matinee movie. So we slide in through the side exit door of the theater. And as we shuffle ourselves through the aisle, we find ourselves 2 vacant seats. As we turn to sit down in the chairs to look up at the movie screen, the little girl sitting right behind us smiles this giant smile. She points her finger and she slowly says, Fonzie. Henry Winkler immediately snaps into the Fonzie character from Happy Days. Hey, whoa. And the lady sitting next to the little girl passes out.
Wow.
Henry Winkler milks the moment. Whoa, I thought this only happened on TV drama. Hey, how cool is this? Whoa. Theater manager comes out and takes care of the woman's needs. She's lying in the aisle. Cold pack on her forehead. She's asked one question. Why did you pass out? She said, my little girl is autistic. And that is the very first word she has ever spoken in her entire life. You have to believe in the sanctity of life, which is embedded in the sanctity of time. We all can get back up and go again, and we need to hold on. And the lyrics to one of my songs, in 2 more days, tomorrow's yesterday. What could happen if you just started dreaming a mighty dream and took a step today? We hear from everyone, counselors, therapists, parents, coaches, anyone. Have to be present in the moment. You've got to be present in the moment. But what if your present sucks?
Oh.
Then you medicate.
Yeah.
Or you try to live in the past, which creates regrets and depression. Or you try to live in the future, which creates worry, stress, and anxiety. What happens if you just focused in on right now? What can you do right now? And all of us can decide to take proaction, be proactive, and take proactive action right now. That's how you prevent suicide. That's why you don't wallow in your misery. Oh, you don't understand, and then medicate, which is really how you flatline your emotion, your human spirit to be resilient. That's why so many people, while they're medicated, end up taking their lives. They're not thinking or feeling or listening or loving.
Wow. So much right there. I mean, service over self and being proactive. Those 2 things, I think, I want to say those again, if that's all right. Service over self and being proactive. I think those are just in this little segment just now are what are amazing and what needs to come out of this. Your little quote that you have, I think I'm going to cut that into something as well. Yeah. That needs to be shared, Dan. Man, once again, let's follow up with this being service over self and being proactive. What services and what have you been doing? Again, we can stick with the suicide prevention if you'd like, to talk about that organization. Also, let's tell the viewers, where you've been and who you've talked to and how some of those places obviously relate to the oil and gas industry. Yeah. But let's talk about this service over self and what you've done, because obviously if you're going to do something, you got to lead by example, right?
Yeah, you do. When I was in the Reagan White House, I mentioned Zig introduced me to somebody who introduced me to Nancy Reagan, invited to the Reagan White House to take her Just Say No program around the country. And that was between 1983 and 1989. And in that same time frame, we had a suicide pandemic in America. And because I turned Just Say No into a time management, telling motivational stories, making them laugh and cry and think and feel. If you're doing something positive, you won't have time to do something negative, and your positive actions will say no for you. It's the secret to a happy marriage, the secret to coaching a team to the championship. Making sure that you understand that pressure is not something that's naturally there. It's created when you question your own ability. When you know what you've been trained to do, there's never any pressure. That's why we train and practice so hard. So before you get yourself in a situation where you're confused and you're thinking about ending your life, make sure your belief's strong enough. Make sure you understand the steps of resiliency, which begins with loving yourself, respecting yourself, and living with integrity. with that commitment to service before self and a commitment to excellence in all you do, the 3 core values of the United States Air Force. Well, because I understood that, but when you get down, when you get rattled, when I was paralyzed, it's easy to forget that. We need programs like yours. We need friendship like you. We need people to come into our lives to remind us about what we already know. The answers are in the box. And so let's just focus for a second. During that suicide pandemic, while I was speaking to high schools, thousands and thousands of high schools, 3 schools every day, 15 a week for 140 school days for 7.5 years in a row. Bam. That's millions of teenagers. Every school was about 2,500 to 3,000 students in every school. It was crazy. And during that same time frame, not to bring up some sad news, but right here in Plano, Texas, they had 6 suicides in their high school in one day, 7 in the same week. Some of you've got to remember that. The South Shore of New Jersey, Ocean Township, Asbury Park, Long Branch, several suicides in a day. One of my 6 offices was in Stamford, Connecticut, Greenwich, Connecticut, the highest per capita income of any county, any community in America. And it always seems to lead the nation in teenage suicides. There's something about affluence and here's $50, I love you, that doesn't ring true with our youth. And I was flown into Iowa. And because this is a national or international program, I won't mention the name of the city or the school, but I was flown into Iowa, and 30 days prior to me coming to their school, they had 100 suicide attempts. One girl died, beautiful head cheerleader, valedictorian, total package, beautiful soul inside and out, and 99 survived their suicide attempts. I was flown into town with Charlotte Ross, the national co-chairperson for suicide prevention, and she took charge. 2,000 students in this high school. She took 1,000 students into the theater. She did the left brain, cognitive, psychobabbling, neurotechnical, educational stuff.
Yeah.
I took the other half of the student body into the gymnasium, and I did the relational, touchy-feely, storytelling, laughing, crying stuff. We swapped audiences, repeated our performance to the best of our ability. And then at the end of the day, we invited in the school administrators, the school counselors, and the healthcare professionals. And we interviewed every single one of these individuals, these 99 young teenagers who had attempted suicide and survived. Every single one of them told us they knew they were liked, they knew they were loved, but they didn't believe they were needed. You know you're liked, you know you're liked. I know I'm loved, you know you're loved. But when we don't feel like we're needed, why hang around? Why hang around a marriage? Why hang around a team? Why hang around a job? Why hang around a community? Why hang around life? And here's the message in a consolidated, cut to the chase message. Because of the society in which we live, which all of us have helped create, yes, we cannot afford to wait for somebody to tell us or show us that we are needed. It might not ever happen. So we need to do something on a daily basis to prove to ourselves that we are needed. So the kicker word in resiliency, the kicker word in recovery, the kicker word in overcoming hunger, anger, loneliness, tired, fatigue, or sadness. If you hold a grudge and you remain angry, it's like you drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. We need to wake up. It's doing more damage to you than the person you're mad at. What we need to do is understand that if we're experiencing any one of those 5 emotionally distorting conditions, we need to participate more and get involved. If you don't feel like you're needed at home, participate more, get involved. If you don't feel like you're needed in your school, participate more, get involved. Prove the bullies wrong. I was bullied as an elementary school student, junior high, and now my life's so much more enjoyable. I've accomplished so much more than those insecure, jealous bullies who tried to put me down to make themselves feel better about who they are. Prove the bullies wrong. You're going to make a lousy somebody else. The only person you need to be better than is the person you were yesterday. We need to fire up. So the kicker word in preventing any negative experience in our lives that begins with our mindset, it's not depression, is to participate more, get involved. And in that word, you deepen it with an understanding of the military, commitment to service before self. So just to tie into my experiences, I honor the military, and I've never been in a military uniform. I'm friends with Chad Hennings, Air Force Academy, A-10 pilot, Dallas Cowboy superstar, one of the finest human beings, Christian gentlemen I've ever met. the same off the field as he is on the field. Unbelievable. Air Force Academy grad. I was just more of a selfish kid, and I never thought that I could go to a service academy and relinquish my identity and wear the same clothes and do everything that everybody else does. I was just too into myself and egotistical. Can any of you relate? But in the process of me being invited to speak to the military, I understand them. I served on the National Civic Leaders Board of the Chief of Staff of the Air Force with General Goldfein, David Goldfein. Prior to him, Mark Welsh, who is now the dean of the Bush College of Business at Texas A&M, and Schwartz. Anyway, because I've given over 350 free speeches to the military, it's how I serve my country. I've been invited to fly all the fighter jets. I flew with the Thunderbird through the air show. I've flown the F-18, go see Top Gun Maverick. I've done everything you've seen in that movie. I've taken off a carrier, landed. I went up to space, 5 hours in a U-2 reconnaissance aircraft, 5 hours, witnessed the curvature of the earth, gazing in the endless blackness of the universe, pondering eternity, all because I was willing to give service before self to our military, which at some point created a moral obligation for the commander to say, Dan, I know what your speaker's fee is. You've donated your time and talents for so long. What can we do for you? I want to fly an F-15. I want to go into space. I want to fly with the Thunderbirds. I want to do an air show. I want to fly an F-4 out of Eglin Air Force Base, B-1 bomber. I flew the B-2 bomber out of Whiteman Air Force Base.
Whoa.
And every dream has come true through service before self, the art and science of networking and figuring out how to influence the affluent. Sorry, I talk without taking a breath. But
No,
I want to
it's
inspire
awesome.
everybody. Give, just like you do. That's what you're famous for, RT.
No, you're the one that's famous for that. And again, service over self. I want to say that again over with this episode of The Crude Truth. I need to challenge myself to be better at that. Service over self, be proactive, be productive. Okay, let's talk about being on the world stage and some of the big oil and gas companies that you've spoken at. Tell us where and with who. Like, let's
So I've been to Beaumont, Texas. I've spoken for ExxonMobil and Phillips. Remember that name? Chevron, Sinclair.
Yes.
I've been on the stage, Valero. One of my favorite things to do is to come in and speak at the refineries. And so obviously they have 3 shifts. So I give 3 speeches. So as one shift is starting, I'm their keynote speaker. And then as the other shift is coming off, I'm their keynote speaker, and we rotate.
Yeah.
Because the blue collar hard workers, the hard-nosed workers are obviously every bit as important, probably more important than the white shirts in the offices. I've spoken at the National VPPA Safety Conference, the National OSHA Safety Conference, the Oil and Gas Safety Conference in Austin, in Houston. I really understand the industry, and I'm just fascinated by my initial connection with Spindletop, because when you see it's just crude oil coming out of the ground and see the refinement process that spills out all these, that literally creates all these residual products from one crude oil. If that's not a metaphor for motivation, a metaphor for success, a metaphor for leadership, I don't know what it is.
Boom.
It's the greatest industry to teach us what we need to do as personal, in personal development, as well as professional development. You think about it. We're paid for the value we bring to the marketplace. We're not paid. It takes time to create value in the marketplace, but we're not paid for time. If that was true, we could just lie around in bed and people would send us money. People brag, I make $20 an hour. Not true. We're paid for the value we bring to the marketplace. And because we live in America, there's an economic income ladder in our free enterprise incentive motivated market. And let's just say it starts at $5 an hour. McDonald's will pay somebody $5 an hour to take out the trash. And now we have legislation. We have people crying to our senators and our congressmen and women, please raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We don't have to pass laws because $15 an hour is already on the economic income ladder. All we have to do to go from $5 an hour to $15 an hour is increase our value to the marketplace. Someone who's only being paid $5 an hour is only worth $5 an hour is only valued as $5 an hour to the marketplace. Don't misunderstand me. That person is still highly valued as a human being. That person is still highly valued as a brother and sister and a member of a family, a father, mother.
Yes.
That person is still highly valued as a church member, as a citizen of the United States of America.
That's right.
But to the marketplace, they have very little value. So instead of whining and saying, pay me more for doing what I'm still doing, pay me more for not even doing what everybody else is doing, increase your value in the marketplace through education, through training, through listening to podcasts, through listening to real news, to listening to positive television shows like RT's. That's how we climb the corporate ladder. That's how we climb the societal ladder. Add value through service before self. So everyone in your personal and professional life always leave saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again.
Yeah.
I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. It's so easy to build a winning team, an organization, if everybody is there to make everybody else around them better with the mindset that when the water line goes up, all the boats rise together. It's so simple, and yet most people don't do it.
I love that. When the water rises, all the boats or rise together.
Absolutely.
That is awesome. Dan, man, what I cannot thank you enough for finding the time, like for giving the time. You know how important time is, just to come here. And for those out there that want to book you, want to talk to you, how can they find you and contact you?
That's so nice of you. I think you have to first and foremost believe that one moment in time changes everything, that a 60-minute keynote from a speaker can transform your culture. Because I will give out a formula. Every culture is created between the strongest belief, highest expectation, best behavior that the leader lives by, and the weakest belief, the lowest expectation, and the worst behavior that the leader tolerates. So in our 60-minute discussion or follow-up courses, as we shrink the distance between belief, expectation, and behavior and what we're not willing to tolerate, we create a high level, a hybrid, up-leveled culture of what I call significant partner leaders, where everybody leads with and without a title. So if you're interested, you can go to danclark.com, which is my website, go to training. And one of the things I'm most proud of, story selling masterclasses and Speak Like a Pro boot camp, so that you can learn how to be a better presenter. Public speaking can increase your value in the marketplace by 50%, according to Warren Buffett, if you become a better public speaker and can tell your corporate or organizational association story. Follow me on Instagram. I have a great podcast called Power Players with Dan Clark, but on Instagram, Dan Clark Speak. And I have Master of the Morning, Own the Day. I've got these little video programs. And look for me on Real TV, because I honor Jeff Crilly. I honor you, RT.
Thank you.
State-of-the-art studios coming to the world from Dallas, Texas, with the most unbelievable producers, the most unbelievable educated and experienced staff in Emilio and Rebecca, and obviously Jeff and the rest of his amazing staff.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's just an honor for me to come to your studios, because it validates what we're talking about. We become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. If you're going to do something, do it first class.
Oh, man.
Pay the price to do whatever you need to do to communicate at that highest level. Again, so everybody leaves saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. 800-676-1121. Call my office. Book me today. I'll customize my speech and take your people to the highest level you could possibly imagine.
Boom. Oh my gosh. If that's not what an episode of the Crude Truth. Dan, thank you. Thank you.
Such a dude,
Thank
man.
you so much for coming
Thanks,
in.
bro. Appreciate you.
Oh man, that's it. Check out danclark.com. What a great guy. Hey, you know what? I like me best with you. Let's do it, and I look forward to it. And that's it for this episode of the Crude Truth. See you next time.
Thanks.
The easiest way to start your own podcast and TV show? Real News Communications Network. Stand out from your competition. Produce streams of high-quality social media content. Become a thought leader in your industry. With RNCN, you get to be the host. We handle everything else. Tour one of our 3 locations in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Colony. Call 972-402-6333 or visit launchashow.com to find out more.